The CentreSteer Podcast, a Land Rover podcast by Land Rover owners. Welcome to the 8th episode of the CentreSteer Podcast. I'm one of the hosts, or I guess the host, John Costage. I own 3 Land Rovers, of which you've probably already heard about. One, the 110, was just moved to the garage yesterday on the back of a flatbed in order to begin its restoration process. So more as that comes up. I think the engine died in it, and guess we'll find out here in short order. So, and our new panel member, Dave, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Dave Carroll. I have 3.5 discoveries. At any moment, 1 or 2 of them may actually run, and one is always pretty well ready to go off-roading. So,
and you arrived in which one today?
I arrived in my 1999 Discovery 2.
This disco, that's your very first disco, wasn't it?
Yes, that was the very first disco that I purchased.
And you just got back from Rovers on The Rocks, which we'll hear about later in the podcast.
Rovers on The Rocks 5.
That's why we invited you here today.
And I'm Harold. I'm deep in the throes of a Rover addiction, so please don't ask me to quantify how many I have.
And I'm Morgan, and I'm from Vermont. I have a Series 388 that I'm in the process of doing a rolling restoration on and a frame over.
And any update on said frame over?
Well, there have been some changes in job hierarchy, so I have a little less free time on my hands. So it's looking at this point like I'm buttoning it up for the winter.
That's right. We need to congratulate you on your promotion. You're now a director, right?
I am, yeah.
Yes, congratulations.
Thanks.
All right, so our first story is Land Rover has been named the 2014 4x4 of the Year by Peterson's Four-Wheel and Off-Road magazine in the United States, specifically, of course, the Land Rover Range Rover Sport Supercharged. It went up against the Chevy Silverado 1500, the Ram 2500 diesel, and the Jeep Grand Cherokee diesel, and it came out as the number 1 truck of the year, 4x4 truck of the year. Let me make that clear, by Peterson's Off-Road. I thought the pros and cons were kind of interesting. They're fun to read. The pros: 510 horsepower feels like 510. Traction control works well. Did we mention 510 horsepower? The cons: low-profile tires, missing front diff lock, and the sticker price, which I'm sure is not surprising to anybody.
A Range Rover being expensive? Imagine that.
Especially the supercharged edition. Yeah.
Well, that's the one to own if you're going to own a Range Rover, gotta say.
Well, that's the Sport, so that's the one that used to be based off of a Disco, but is not anymore. It's its own frame, right?
That's true, and a lot of the naysayers have said, well, it's not a real Range Rover, but tell you what, if you're going to drive one on the street, that's the one to have.
Or off-road, apparently.
Well, yeah, I think maybe...
It has 510 horsepower.
As a purist, if I was going to go off-road, well, the last thing you need is a whole lot of horsepower off-road, but nonetheless, for street driving, they're a lot of fun.
They are. I've not driven one myself. I've been in it.
That's part of my jobs when I get to work on those.
The supercharged...
Especially giving one an Italian tune-up.
And you have to define that for those who don't know.
Maybe on another podcast.
It could be maybe that's an M word, the Italian tune-up.
Maybe.
Which is basically you floor it.
Repeatedly,
yes.
Until it runs better.
Hey, blow the carbon out.
You're just helping it out.
That is the objective.
You're just helping it out. So, it's good though that it was recognized as a good truck. Interesting, the comparison that it went up against. I found it. They even said in the article that it may have been surprising that it was in here along with the 2 diesels, which were also new.
Yeah, it doesn't seem apples to apples, really.
Yeah, I mean, I could see comparing it to, doing a comparison with a Grand Cherokee, but why not compare it with a Grand Cherokee with a Hemi?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, maybe
because the supercharging, I can see that.
Yeah, I think that the pickups and everything too, it's not exactly the same dynamic as an SUV.
Right.
Yeah, longer wheelbases.
And I guess I don't know if it's apples to apples. Maybe it's more like organic heirloom vintage grown in a boutique orchard versus canned applesauce.
I didn't see that here in the article, but I wonder, is this a situation where they, like I think Car and Driver does this, you have to have made a significant change or be a new model to be included?
That's a Motor Trend thing, but that could be.
I think Car and Driver does that too.
I think a lot of them do that.
I wonder if this is a similar situation where they pick only the ones that are significantly improved or altered, revved, something like that, or brand new.
I think what's most interesting to me is this is an American publication and they're choosing a British vehicle, because the American publications often aren't all that kind, at least in comparing to other American products.
I'm surprised that a Ford F-150 wasn't on here. Because usually that's like the truck.
And normally when Ford gets wind of a Chevy being in one of these things, they make sure one of their products is there.
And vice versa.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, usually Ford, Chevy, and Dodge. And
right, the big three.
The big three, right?
And I like that 2 of the vehicles are diesels too. I mean, that's moving things in a positive direction.
Which makes me think that it is you have to have a significant change in your vehicle in order to be included.
Yeah, and I believe that they have that requirement as well.
Yeah, that could be. Although, that being said, if I had the money and was looking for a pickup truck, it would absolutely be that Ram 2500 with the diesel in it. Without a doubt. There's just that in terms of a hauling truck and a pulling truck, that is the stuff.
Because it's a diesel, or because the way it's the way they make the diesel.
The truck itself is well built.
Yeah.
The suspension is good. Everything about it is good, and then there is that engine.
The Cummins.
The Cummins, yeah. The Cummins has gotten so much better over the years, and you're talking torque well in excess of 600 pound-feet.
Well, and it was good to begin with.
It was good to begin with, but it's better.
Yeah.
And it keeps getting better.
Over the last winter, I actually helped someone put one into an older Dodge.
Oh, yeah.
And we took it for a spin, and it was quite impressive. It had been performance tuned, but
they're great out of the box. I mean, just box stock, they're fabulous. But yeah, you can do a lot to them too. Got to remember, this is big rig technology in a consumer pickup.
Right.
So next story is staying on the Range Rover Sport. The Sport model has been changed, as we already know. It's no longer based on the Discovery frame. It's its own frame now. Land Rover is also making a long wheelbase version of the Range Rover, standard Range Rover, and they're adding Autobiography black variants. The Autobiography being a special edition version. Then there's the black variant, which it's tough for me to keep straight of all the different things that are going on there. But
the black refers to the extra deep hole in your wallet that it will create.
Oh, it creates the black hole in your wallet.
It's the black hole in your wallet edition of the Range Rover. That's the one that's a six-figure.
Autobiography
six-figure.
But the Autobiography puts it over $100,000.
The Autobiography black makes it even that much more so.
So apparently, it made its debut at the 2013 Los Angeles Auto Show in November here, this past month, and so it's out and about. If you want to go buy one, feel free to do so. Let us know how it turns out for you.
I can't wait till I get to see one out on the trails
in about 15 years.
No, not necessarily.
There are people out there that will run them pretty quickly. There are people with plenty of money and don't mind messing up new stuff.
Well, I mean, if you go to an event, events like the Wilds, you see people in Range Rover Sports.
But do you see people in Range Rover Sport Autobiography black editions?
Well, maybe not. You can hope.
They might drive it there. I don't necessarily think they'll take it on the road or on the trail.
You'll see it.
You'll see.
It'll be there. If you get out
eventually.
Yeah.
It'll be there. I think my favorite of the special editions, and I wish they'd bring it back, is the Holland and Holland edition.
Which was?
It was a Range Rover that was equipped with all sorts of custom gun cabinets because it was made for the well-heeled hunter.
Yes.
And not only were there all these custom-fitted gun cabinets, there was also a liquor cabinet built in, which was automatically restocked. When it ran low, someone from Land Rover would come out and restock your liquor for you. And it was part of the purchase price of the vehicle was that you had unlimited liquor for a year or however long.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, yeah, in that case, that's the well-heeled, as you said.
Well, and it's just the ultimate, it's the ultimate high-end equipping of the fatal mix of guns and alcohol.
And cars. All three. Yes. You got the big three.
The trifecta.
The trifecta.
The death trifecta.
And which brings us back to the black edition, because there's the black hole in your wallet of which all that money goes.
Right.
So the Range Rover Sport also has done a record desert crossing. And I think, Harold, you are familiar with this, so I'll let you...
It's something I came across. It's the Arabian Peninsula, all the way across Saudi Arabia to the United Arab Emirates border, is considered one of the most challenging desert courses for off-roading. It's actually the largest all-sand desert in the world. And they just took a Range Rover Sport across it and set some sort of record. I think it's a speed record for crossing that desert.
Right. And it says here that it was completed in 10 hours, 22 minutes, averaging 51.87 miles per hour over the 527-mile route. That's not counting fuel stops because there weren't any.
That's impressive enough right there that you actually got it to get all the way across without drinking all the fuel because, as we all know, Range Rovers are not prized for their excess fuel economy.
That would be true. I wonder, was this a diesel? I didn't see that here in the article. Is it a diesel? No, it was in fact a 5-liter supercharged V8 gas engine using standard tires. The only thing they added for the trip was underbody protection plate. It was driven by Moy Torreladona. 47. I know I've butchered the name, and I apologize. 47-year-old Spanish off-road racer with Dakar rally experience. So interesting. But they've been doing a lot of that now. That's the third or fourth kind of expedition record-setting event this year. Is that correct?
Yeah, they did. I watched what I actually thought was an infomercial with Robbie Gordon, the guy who almost perennially wins the Pikes Peak Hill Climb.
Okay.
He ran a Range Rover Sport to the top and supposedly broke the production car record. Again, it might well have been staged. Well, it was staged, but it was an infomercial program length show.
Well, they went across America on the non-roads, all the trails from Tennessee.
The Transamerica Trail.
Transamerica Trail. They did. That's the one. They've done a full electric Defender. That was another thing that they've been kind of testing out. There was what's this one with the Cape Town? They went London to Cape Town. That was another.
Yeah, I think that was another record.
Another record.
They did that in record time. And
this has all been in the past year, so they've been really pushing and testing out and showing the capabilities of all the trucks.
And the impressive thing is that it's often done with minimal preparation. And in case in point, this desert crossing was done with, it was basically bone stock. They put a skid plate underneath it, but they drove nonstop in loose sand with stock tires and the stock 510 horsepower.
Did I mention it has 510 horsepower?
Maybe we should mention that.
There
Which
he is.
would probably make things a lot harder in sand.
I would think it would just dig right down, and that would be the end of the run.
Well, no, because you have terrain response. You have terrain response version 2, as a matter of fact. All you need to do is dial in sand, and it knows what to do.
From what I've seen, terrain response has been very, very good. So version 2, assuming that it was a step in the right direction.
So it would hopefully know that when you put it into the sand setting, it would know not to over torque the tires.
Well, terrain response would have to be excellent to be able to contain 510 horsepower through stock tires in loose sand.
And maybe that's what they're really showing off.
And that
even though they've not mentioned it, that's probably what they're really showing off is this capability they have built into the truck, which is you dial in the setting and then it helps you to achieve your goal.
Well, it's the capability of that and the fact that you can give it this punishment and it's not going to break down halfway there.
That too. Reliability is a big show,
and it's not going to drink 3 tanks of fuel doing it.
Yes,
and they didn't have to fill the rear full of extra fuel tanks.
Good point.
Stock fuel tank.
Filled
once.
Now that you mention it, that is huge. That is very, very huge.
I mean, anybody who drives one of these things knows just crossing the county is an accomplishment. So here they've crossed the largest sand desert in the world.
Or they've gone all the way across the United States, or they on non-paved roads.
Well, not on a single tank of fuel.
But
nonetheless, yes.
But
I was excited. I got up to 11 miles.
Woo!
What is this, 1978?
Yeah. So maybe I was the only one that wasn't clear on this, but it's a motorcycle trail.
It originally was a motorcycle trail.
So
yes.
That was. I thought it was impressive that they did it anyway, but then knowing motorcycle trails, realizing that they then took a bunch of LR4s and did this, that's when it really became impressive.
Yeah, I think they kind of they had a leader, at least for a good part of it, coming out of Tennessee, and he was a motorcycle guy, had done this before, and these were the first, I think, four-wheel drive or four-wheeled vehicles to take the Trans-America Trail, and from beginning to end, and a lot of it looked to be wide enough. It wasn't like real narrow. I'm sure the video that we saw a couple months ago when it came out was. I don't think they showed where they had a blaze new trail, but I'm sure they did a couple times. So I guess the thing we're learning from all this is if you want to make an expedition right now, the time to do it is in a Range Rover Sport supercharged with 510 horsepower.
The only way to off-road.
The only way to off-road.
And if we could talk them into going back to a Holland where they restock the bar, then it would be perfect.
They can come out in the middle of Oregon or wherever you are and then say, "Sir,
Death Valley.
Yes. You need some whiskey. Here's your whiskey."
Absolutely.
All right, next up. So Land Rover, building on all this, Land Rover is doing very well, as we have been talked about for the last several months, and they are moving ahead with building additional plants. They're hiring 1,000 workers in China. They are building a plant in Brazil, which is new, and they are also working with Chery, if I'm saying that correctly, the Chinese automaker, actually in China, I think, to build vehicles in China itself, not only Land Rovers, but Jaguars. And so they are moving ahead in the big market that is China, that is growing quickly. We've talked about this before. The Americans used to be able to dictate what cars were like, and I think that time is coming to I don't know if I'd say a complete end, but it's certainly diminishing, I think, in what future vehicles might be like. But this, I think, kind of shows that.
It's not necessarily a bad thing.
Oh, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but I think this shows that with them building plants and in other countries, you don't see them building plants here. I think that's a big tell.
It'll be interesting to see, though, if the Brazil plant will help to supply the North American market, whether that's strictly going to be to service Brazilians.
There are enough cars out there that we can't get in the United States.
Yeah, all the good stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it feels like all the good stuff. I've heard from more than one person when talking about when speaking about discoveries, at least. It seems like on a lot of the different forums around, there are a lot of people that are really focused on, it'd be great to have a turbo diesel discovery. But at the same time, when you find some of the international members of the forum, some of them, not necessarily everyone, but you don't have to listen too hard to hear them go, really? You guys want the turbo diesels? Because we're all trying to put V8s in over here. Because everybody's got turbo diesels. And wow, V8s would be nice to go run around and have all that power. Yeah,
well, these are guys that haven't had to pay for the fuel for one before either, so.
True.
You tend to build a mythology around things that you don't really get a chance to see much of, and so if you can't get it here, it becomes more mystical, more valuable.
Well, it seems I also think the fuel prices are probably dictate a lot of that. And I suspect, and I'm trying to recall, I think the price of diesel is typically cheaper in Europe. It's cheaper here, but the differential, I think, is greater here.
Well, diesel's frequently more expensive even here. Not
than gas. Let me rephrase that.
Per mile, it ends up being dramatically cheap.
It's more. Diesel here is more expensive than regular gasoline.
Right.
It's cheaper though than premium gasoline.
Okay.
I think that I should make that clear.
It's normally pretty close actually in price. Sometimes it's a little bit cheaper than premium.
Right.
Actually, I've seen it sometimes where it's been just a few pennies more. It just depends on market fluctuations and all that.
Right, where you are.
Generally, I try to say that the premium gasoline and diesel are roughly the same price. But again, your miles per gallon are much higher with the diesel, so your cost per mile is much lower.
That's correct. That's, I think, where I don't know that you're getting that in Europe. Maybe you are.
I think you still are. It's a different relationship in pricing, but it's still cheaper per mile with the diesel.
And I think they've been using diesel certainly a lot longer than we have. I mean, they took to it.
Sure.
We took to gasoline, and gasoline has been gasoline engines seem to have been getting more efficient and are getting better at power output over time. So there's some value in maybe using gasoline. Maybe it's why they like the gasoline.
Whereas diesel is kind of going the other direction. It's losing some efficiency in exchange for being quieter and smoother and having a lot fewer emissions.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Well, I do know that. I mean, I've seen some people try to off-road some of their diesel. I'm thinking specifically of a 110, and watching one particular individual have trouble clearing the lugs in their MT tires because they couldn't get it spun up hard enough. So that just kind of drove home wow, maybe I do like my.
Well, the diesel is more about torque. It's more about low RPM.
Right.
Yeah, so if you're into any kind of driving that requires high wheel speeds, you probably are better off with a big gasoline engine because you can get the RPM up.
Right. But typically with a diesel, you shouldn't get into trouble, right?
Diesels.
I kid.
Well, I mean, the diesels have a lot of huge advantages. I mean, if you're talking about an expedition vehicle where you're going to encounter water.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I mean, that's almost a no-brainer. But there's a flip side to it, too.
And some of the wheel speed issues can be dealt with better gearing.
True.
So to get back on topic, the Brazil plant is the fourth largest, or Brazil itself, is the fourth largest economy, and I think the reason they're moving into that is simply for the sales potential.
It can
Brazil.
be a big market, and plus they can supply other South American countries. I was just curious how much of that capacity might help the supply issue in this country. Going back to the China issue, I'm curious to see how this is going to shake out, and if this is going to be a cooperative manufacturing venture. It'll be interesting to see what that might do for the quality. It was once said years ago during the merger acquisition between Daimler and Chrysler that in an automotive heaven, vehicles would be designed by Chrysler and built by Mercedes-Benz. And in an automotive hell, it would be the exact other way around. So I'd be curious to see what a British designed vehicle manufactured in China is going to be like quality-wise.
Yes. I think that's a big question. Yes.
I think we're going to see.
Of course, I can't fathom much the thought of Chinese-designed vehicles being built by the British either. So that's the worst of both worlds, I think.
That probably. Well, the British are getting better.
They are.
They're definitely, as is evidenced by all these expeditions they've been taking to prove and point out their capability and reliability. Americans have also gotten better over the last 30 years in building vehicles. So I'll give you that. That's absolutely true. And so have the Koreans, the South Koreans in particular. Everybody's gotten better.
Well, yeah, including the Chinese. If you really look at what they were doing 10 years ago versus what they do now, I still think they have a long way to go.
Right. The thing about building a better car is that they've replaced the human with with a robot, with a machine. And the machine is able to replicate a good quality product over and over and over again. Doesn't all the things you normally hear. They don't have to sleep, they don't have to drink, they don't have to think, they don't love, and all those kinds of things. So they're not distracted, and they continue to do that, pound that out. And those tolerances are much better. So you then have overall a much more reliable vehicle.
Certainly in terms of the labor involved in making the parts and some of the assembly, that's true. An additional problem, however, that is somewhat unique to the Chinese is that their materials, they lack the consistency and quality there, and that's why a lot of times you can pull one product off of a production line in China and it'll be very good, and 3 hours later you can pull another item and it's junk, because their material is inconsistent, and unless you specify an absolute quantifiable measure on a certain product or material going into a product, they're going to use whatever they have, and you really kind of are taking pot luck in terms of the quality.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I mean, their response typically to issues is to throw more people at it and not to fix necessarily the engineering. At least that's been my understanding of things. But this plant that JLR is going to build is, I think, part to help the Chinese in the building of said vehicles, but also gives Jaguar a foothold in China, making it easier for them to build in China, where the potentially biggest market is going to be in the next 50 years.
And perhaps access to some much cheaper labor.
Oh, I would think definitely access to cheaper labor. Yeah.
And reducing their import costs, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And doing work in China is... You don't just set up shop and say you're going to, all of a sudden, now we're going to build here and build a plant and they come. That's not how that happens. Even though it's a huge country, there's a lot of patronage. Red tape does not mean, not the way we think of red tape. Red tape more means you need to know people in order for that red tape to go away. It's still very much, their culture is still very much who you know, and then things get taken care of. So they're now getting to know somebody on the inside that'll allow them some access. So
interesting.
Yes. So obviously more to come on this particular topic, and we'll typically watch it as we have it.
Herald and Word.
In ancient Greek mythology, the muses were 9 goddesses who provided the inspiration for literature, science, and the arts. They were the embodiment of all knowledge, and it was thought that nothing creative or intellectual could be accomplished without first gaining their favor. In modern times, the term muse has been defined as a source of inspiration. Today, we will discover how the British automobile industry found its muse in an unlikely source, a pair of Victorian-era cartoonists. William Heath Robinson was born in London in 1872 to a family of artists. He studied art at the Royal Academy and was interested in painting landscapes, but since he knew this was not a good way to pay the bills, he went to work illustrating books. He also found work drawing humorous cartoons for magazines, and he would soon become well known for drawing cartoons of crazy inventions. The machines he drew used complex arrangements of pulleys, threaded by lengths of knotted string. They were powered by tea kettles, heated by candles or a spirit lamp, and usually kept running by balding, bespectacled men in overalls. Robinson's cartoons were so popular that in Britain the term Heath Robinson is used to refer to an improbable, rickety machine barely kept going by incessant tinkering. Meanwhile, across the pond, Reuben Lucius Goldberg was born in San Francisco on July 4, 1883. From the age of 4, Rube, as he was called by friends and family, liked to draw pictures. However, his father, who was the police and fire commissioner in San Francisco, encouraged him to pursue a career in engineering. In 1904, Reuben Goldberg graduated from the College of Mining at the University of California, Berkeley, and was hired by the city of San Francisco as an engineer for the Water and Sewers Department. This job did not sit well with Goldberg, and after only 6 months, he left the Sewers Department to become an office boy in the sports department of a San Francisco newspaper. There he began to submit drawings and cartoons to the editor until he was finally published. He soon moved to New York to work for the Evening Mail drawing daily cartoons. Goldberg created several comic strips and won a Pulitzer Prize for his political cartoons, but he was best known for his inventions, which combined his engineering background with his cartooning talents. A typical Rube Goldberg contraption used a room full of arms, wheels, gears, handles, rods, and teacups, and set them in motion with balls, canary cages, pails, boots, bathtubs, and live animals to perform simple tasks like unfolding a napkin or taking the cotton out of an aspirin bottle. In the popular Mousetrap board game, the object is to assemble and test a Rube Goldberg device. In the UK, the name Heath Robinson became part of the language as a description of any unnecessarily complex and implausible contraption, often used in relation to temporary fixes using ingenuity and unlikely cannibalization, and whatever else is at hand, like string and tape. Its popularity is probably linked to Britain's wartime shortages and the need to make do and mend. An example of Heath Robinson engineering in British motoring is the Lucas petrol injection system of the 1960s. It was an all-mechanical contraption that seemed to contain more parts than necessary and required lots of tinkering and tuning to keep it running properly. Production vehicles that used it were plagued with reliability problems and high maintenance cost. When working properly, it was capable of producing lots of power. In its day, it was dominant in many types of racing, at least for teams that could tame it. Anyone familiar with vintage racing will tell you that a crew member who knows how to stay on top of a Lucas injection system is worth his weight in gold. In 1931, Webster's Dictionary adopted the term Rube Goldberg as an adjective defined as accomplishing something simple through complex means, a comically involved, complicated invention laboriously contrived to perform a simple operation. It has become synonymous with an unnecessarily complicated device, or one for which there was no need in the first place. An example of this is the brake failure warning lamp in the Series 3 Land Rovers. It was designed to alert the driver of a loss of brake fluid or vacuum in the power assist booster. This is not a bad idea by itself, but since it wasn't deemed reliable enough, a circuit was added to test the light bulb. The problem was that the test switch was integrated with the lamp housing, resulting in an expensive replacement part, which was just as likely to fail as anything else in the circuits it was designed to monitor. Plus, if the driver didn't remember to push the test button before driving, it was useless anyway. Enthusiasts of British vehicles will tell you that British engineers are notorious for artfully over-designed, yet somehow fatally flawed solutions to problems that never really existed in the first place. For this, we give thanks to Heath Robinson and Rube Goldberg, the muses of British motoring.
Okay, next up we are going to discuss expeditions. So you may have heard of the Overland Journal, which is kind of a big magazine in the expedition arena. There's also something I just learned about, but apparently they haven't posted in a while, but it's Land Rover Series Around the World. Looks like a German couple has been traveling around the world in their 109. 1982? Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, 1982, 109, six-cylinder petrol, five-door station wagon. And they have been driving around the world, although they haven't posted anything new since 12. The only reason I bring it up is simply because the expedition is kind of cool idea, and it's something I'm personally interested in, because in a few years, in 2017, I plan to drive around the United States, maybe North America, if I can fit in parts of Canada and Quebec. I have Quebec friends, so I have to mention Quebec as a separate country. In 2017, when I turn 50, I plan to drive around the country in my 110, which we talked about earlier, has just gone off back over to Harold's shop in order to start the restoration process.
To begin being recommissioned for the big trip.
For the big trip, yes. And so I'm very interested in expeditions, and these people that are driving around the world in their 109 interest me. And there are others. Overland Journal kind of caters to those folks. As a matter of fact, I also bought a new tent just for the purpose. This past week, LL Bean had a sale on the tent I want, so it's one of these turbo tents. It's quick up. I can put it up in a minute once you stake it down, and so that's part of my kit for an expedition. And of course, I'm very interested in getting an awning for the 110, and I've been looking around for awnings. And Rovers North magazine had a little typo this past issue they came out with that said they had an awning for $350. I'm like, there's no way. And
buy every last one they have.
I would have bought 10 of them if they had them at that price.
How many do you got? Send them this way.
Yes. Unfortunately, it was in fact a typo. There really are $1,600. And so that was...
Which actually is about on par with that style of awning anywhere.
Yes. And this was the Batwing version of the awning we had talked about a couple of this was I think a different model, different kind of, it's almost
but the Batwing is the cool one that doesn't require any
supports, and neither did and the Rovers North one didn't require any supports either, and they were kind of optional but didn't require any supports. But this was, they had 350, and I'm like, that's got to be a typo. So it was in fact a typo. But these are, I know, these are things that interest me, so I kind of follow along with these ideas.
Well, I think it's interesting that people are taking an interest in these expeditions, and I like the fact that they're making the expedition in vintage Land Rovers. They're not going out and buying something new for these big trips. It's something older, like your 110, which is really just kind of a classy way to take your time cruising the continent. You're not in a hurry, so why drive something fast?
It doesn't go fast.
This one doesn't go fast, so there isn't the option. You have to slow down and enjoy the countryside.
We were referring to the Top Gear episode when they did the Series 1, where it doesn't go fast. So.
Right, definitely. But it's doing something important somewhere for someone.
I really enjoy that stuff.
I really enjoyed watching the video of the first overland from the 50s in the Series 1s, where they went London to Singapore, I think it was.
I think if it wasn't Singapore, it was close.
Yeah, I think it was somewhere
down that way.
Across the entire Eurasian continent.
I actually have the video. I haven't watched it in a while, but yeah.
And many places where there were no roads.
There were. They went through India. They took 2 Series 2s.
They were Series 1s.
They were Series 1s.
Those were Series 1s.
Yeah, it was.
And they were short wheelbase.
And Cambridge.
Oxford and Cambridge, yes. That's right. Yeah.
Right, there was an Oxford team and a Cambridge team, and they were a pair of identically prepped Series 1 short wheelbase.
Right.
I'm not sure if it would have been 86 or 88 at that point, but it's
I think it was 88.
I think it was 88. Vehicle.
No, it was definitely not a big vehicle. Yeah. And I remember they were in India somewhere, and they had to float them across a small stream or river, and they had to build some bridges, and they had some breakdowns. And there were 2 guys in each truck, I think.
Something like that. I'll have to watch the video. It's been a number of years since I've seen the video. I'll have to watch it again.
Gives me a good reason to break out the video.
I have a special autographed edition of the video.
Yes, I think I do too. Yeah. I think we got 3 or 4 of those at the time.
I think, it was a group buy.
Because that footage was lost. The BBC did a story on that back in the 60s when that occurred. And then and then that story plus other footage was all lost for a number of years. And then the gentleman whose name I can't think of it right now, he still get his newsletter periodically. He found the footage and resurrected, found the book. Remember the story. He found the book and then was able to find footage again and interview 1 or 2 of the remaining survivors. I think there's 3 of the 4 guys are still around, or maybe all 4 guys are still around. And they found the footage again and pulled the video back out.
Didn't they just recreate this with the millionth discovery? That wasn't it just last year? The millionth Land Rover Discovery rolled off the assembly line, and they drove it from Solihull to Hong Kong.
I recall that now. I think maybe you're correct.
Like they rolled it off the assembly line, drove it from Solihull to Hong Kong, and drove it right into the Hong Kong car show.
Wow, I forgot about that. Yeah, neat. Tells you what Land Rover people do. How many other vehicles do that? Who's done that with a Silverado or a Jeep?
Well, interestingly enough, back to our earlier story about the desert crossing, the world record desert crossing thing that they did in the Range Rover Sport with the 510 horsepower in the sand. At the completion of that desert run, they drove it right into the Dubai Motor Show. Nice. And they timed the crossing so that they could just get off the desert, keep on rolling, and go right through the doors into the show.
It's marketing.
Oh, yeah.
Great marketing. It's good stuff. Yeah. Dave, you have any expeditions planned?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
There's always something percolating in my head. So.
Yeah,
little kids and family.
That's true.
I was really hoping to have my Land Rover frame over done so I could do, I don't plan to do full expeditions because I've just got an 88 Series 3, but, it's nice to see other people doing it. It gives me a little faith that I can still do it.
Why couldn't you do an expedition in your 88?
Oh, I could. I just don't know if I'm really up for, driving across the entire country in a Series 388. I'd like to do
we have a guy in our club that takes his 88. He's gone up to the Rover Romp in the wintertime. Main winter romp. Well, he's also gone to Nova Scotia.
To Moab twice.
He's driven to Moab twice.
Nice.
That's an accomplishment.
That is.
So it's not so much that your truck isn't enough; it's maybe that you aren't enough.
Yeah, I think at this point in my life, that's just not. I'm not ready to jump right into full expeditions.
You realize that the guy we're talking about is older than you. He's older than I am.
Older than any of us.
I'm considering myself quite young, so it's not that I'm too old. It's that I have plenty of other things I want to do first.
So perhaps you're not old enough.
Right.
Okay, that's right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but one of the reasons I got the Series 3 is because, for any type of long trip or expedition, they are very simple vehicles to work on. So they're, much better options for those kinds of trips. Naturally, in the U.S., maybe less so, but, going across Africa or Asia, there are a lot of Series Land Rover vehicles out there to steal parts from. So,
well, and if you have access to a website that helps you to find the parts for it to fix it, that makes it all the much easier.
That does.
And a cell phone.
Yeah.
Because then you can call
a world cell phone.
Cell phone will travel.
Well, and actually, in this country, that's a thing too, because there's a whole network of series truck owners out there, and it's very much a close knit community. So wherever you are, there's someone not too far away that can help you out.
That's very much the case. I mean, not with anything you drive, whether it's Disco or even Freelander, or you're driving a Land Rover, and the community's there if you do need something. I've seen that happen a number of times.
Well, that's certainly true, but I've found that it's actually much more of a thing with the series truck owners. But yeah, absolutely, and the series truck owners are into Discos as well and that sort of thing.
Right,
definitely.
Right. Well, except for the Range Rover people. I mean, they're always different. So they're cut above and don't know anything going on underneath them. So
I don't know. I wheeled this weekend with a pair of P38s.
But that's a P38. How old is that?
Well,
the P38 is rapidly becoming not a Range Rover.
That could be.
I mean, Range Rover Classic. Those people are different. They're special. They're the people that would drive.
There are lots of those.
Those are kick-ass trucks. But when I say Range Rover, I'm talking about the current people. You typically don't see them drive off the showroom floor and go right to an off-roading event. You will see that with a Disco 4, an LR4, an LR3. That'll happen. But
I don't find the owners of the late model Range Rovers banding together to help further the mark and to support their need to keep it running.
Yes, they're banding together to do other things. Yes.
I have certainly heard my fair share of stories of Range Rover owners looking at old series Land Rovers and saying, "What is that?" and not understanding that they're even under the same company.
You are correct, sir.
Of their heritage or anything.
That's true. It is all about the heritage, which, that's a good way to put that. I don't think they fully understand the heritage. I mean, have you waved going down the road, and how many times does a Range Rover wave back?
Never.
Except if someone you know. That's about it. Yeah.
Well, I don't wave all that often either, but usually my hands have way too many things to do.
Well, it's tough around here, especially to wave at anybody, because you usually do not see another Land Rover when you're in your Land Rover. and that you don't already know.
And when I'm in mind, I've got way too many things to do just to keep it on the road and keep it running.
That's true. I mean, and usually when I see another Land Rover that I don't know that I do wave at, it's usually on the turnpike or the highway, and you're going, well, I'm doing 50, 60, they're doing 80, and they hardly even take note of you, let alone see that you've waved.
Have any of you guys looked into the Vehicle Dependent Expedition Guide?
I have not heard of the Vehicle Dependent Expedition Guide. Do tell.
There is a book put out by, I believe it is called Desert Wind Press, written by a fellow by the name of Tom Shepard. And he has basically written a Bible of how to, or what everything you need to know to go on an expedition.
Apparently it's available on Amazon, which would
it
be
was
cool.
Not. It was printed, and then it went out of print for a while, and just in the last year or so, it has gone back into print, or they have done another printing.
Well, it looks like I'm going to need to find out other printing because it's available for $200.
Well, I mean, if you were looking for
Paperbacks,
someone to loan you a copy,
I may do that.
I would happen to have a copy.
Oh, well, you're someone to know, Dave.
Yeah.
That would be very cool. I would like to see the Vehicle Dependent Expedition Guide by Tom Shepard.
What's your take on it? Obviously, if you have it, you've read it.
Well, I have not read the whole book, and one of the interesting statements early in the book is, you will probably never make it all the way through this book.
Really?
It's meant as a reference, and you need to pick and choose.
See, now that sounds like a challenge. They've thrown the gauntlet down.
It is 544 pages.
Okay.
It weighs 3.8 pounds. So apparently you can use it to drive over it.
Yeah, I mean, it talks about everything from procuring supplies and equipment in faraway lands to shipping vehicles and selecting vehicles for expeditions and different parts of the world, and where to go about getting things shipped in if you do run across a situation where you need some specific piece of equipment. Includes even contact phone numbers for outfits like LL Bean.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Because apparently they're very supportive of expeditions.
So it's about vehicle-based expeditions, but not necessarily vehicle-specific in terms of
right. It's not necessarily a Land Rover specific publication, but
still sounds like a good resource.
Well, but they do cover a lot of Land Rover information.
That's cool. I saw one comment here that the book originally was going for $730.
I have seen.
So it must be a good book if people are still
more expensive than the vehicle you're going to make the expedition in, perhaps.
Especially people like me.
If you're going to go in an old disco, you're going to start with a cheap one.
That's right.
The disco probably will be cheaper than $700. You're
yes.
right. Yes, and before you kit it out.
Well, yeah, before you kit it out, obviously,
yes. and upgrade
the base vehicle upon which you build your expedition will cost less than the book that tells you how to do it.
Well, I would like to borrow the book if you would be so kind as to lend it to me.
I know exactly where it is.
Good. So we
might have to make the rounds through the club library. I think
we can do that.
We will keep folks updated, and I'll take a look at the book, and we'll keep folks updated on expeditions. It's obviously something close to my heart because I want to do one, even if I'll occasionally be in a hotel. I still want to go that path.
If you contact Desert Wind, the publisher, it's interesting. You will probably get an email directly back from Tom Shepard.
Very interesting. All right.
So Tom Shepard is Desert Wind?
I believe so.
Okay.
I've not seen anything that says that he is, but I think he is.
Like Bill Burke is 4x4 Off-Road America?
Yes.
Gotcha. All right. Well, more on expeditions as we learn about them. That's something we certainly keep our eye on here on the podcast. Next up, we're going to go to our new panelist, Dave, to talk about Trail Report. Dave has gone to 2 events in the past month or so, and we want Dave to report on those. That would be Robosonia, the technical course, and Rovers On The Rocks. So, Dave, take off.
Actually, I have to admit that due to technical British engineering-related difficulties, I was unable to make it to Robosonia.
I see. Well, so first of all, tell us about what Robosonia is supposed to be about, and then tell us about your technical difficulties.
Robosonia is in my opinion, wonderful off-roading experience.
And it's located in Pennsylvania?
In Robosonia, Pennsylvania. It is hosted by a member of the roversclub.org.
The people from Virginia?
No.
Rovers,
with periods after each letter.
Oh, right. Yeah, those folks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is a trials event versus a traditional, one of the more common, let's go off-roading somewhere type events, wherein you have to drive each section through a series of gates, and you are scored based on your time and your progress without striking any of the gates.
It's about precision and timing.
It's absolutely about precision and timing. I am actually lousy at describing it because I've only actually been to the event one time, although I have tried to get back to it every single time since then.
And yet the Rover gods have not complied with your request.
No, they have not. Well, there have been a couple of times that the having little girls gods have prevented me from making it.
Uh-huh. Well, but this past time you had a technical fault with your disco, right?
Yes, I had a number of issues, but about 2 weeks before I was supposed to leave, my entire cooling system sort of imploded due to a failure of the fan taking out just about everything.
Oh. And that's not the first time that's happened to you either.
Well, the first time that it happened, it was due to broken engine mounts. I have subsequently replaced them with the QT solid engine mounts. So it was not due to that this time. The failure of the fan is still something of a mystery.
Oh. Now, did the fan shatter, or
the fan shattered?
The blades shattered, or did they come off the shaft? And
no, the blades. Well, the D2 fan has a rim around the end of all the blades.
Right.
The entire plastic assembly of the fan shattered and went through the radiator and all of the associated hoses anywhere near it, along with both the top and bottom of the airbox. It crushed, and this is what really killed the trip for me. It crushed the hard high-pressure line that runs from the front to the rear of the steering box.
Ooh.
So when I moved the truck into the garage to fix it, I noticed there was a little choppiness to the power steering, and turns out it was because it wasn't getting a proper amount of fluid passing through because the line was smashed flat.
Ooh. It was a pretty spectacular mechanical failure.
Yes.
And it's interesting that it didn't happen off-road.
It didn't happen off-road. I was coming home from the dentist, and I heard this smash, and I looked up in my rearview mirror thinking that I'd run over like a branch in the street or something, and I saw the fluttering of small pieces of black plastic, and I thought, oh, crap.
So that stopped you from going to Robosonia?
Ultimately, that prevented me from going to Robosonia.
Okay.
I was able to get all the cooling system. I was able to get the cooling system rebuilt, take care of the airbox, and all of that before Robosonia. And as I was putting everything back together, I noticed the crushed power steering line, and that was just something that you can't source that individual part. You have to either find an old steering box and pull it off, which I was luckily able to get someone. One of the guys within the Green Oval Guild sent me one because he had a couple of old steering boxes. And he was able to get one off and send it to me. Or you have to fabricate one out of 5/16 tube.
So obviously you didn't have enough time to do either, so that
right.
prevented you. So what did you hear about the Robosonia event? Did anybody go that you
I knew several people. I understand that.
Or what do you know from your experience? I have an idea in my head what it's like, but I mean, it's all technical. All technical courses?
Technical. They use various types of rovers to set up the courses.
Okay.
So
it's a Land Rover specific event?
It is a Land Rover specific event. Depending on which type of vehicle you're driving, you may have some sort of an advantage on one course. But because they use a number of different vehicles when they're setting it up, typically you may do well on one stage and not on another.
So you have these different stages, I take it.
Yeah.
And then do you get scored on each stage, and is there an overall winner?
Stage.
Is there a stage winner and an overall winner, or is there winners at all?
There are winners. There are small prizes given out.
Okay.
You're scored by passing through each of 10 gates in each stage. First gate is number 10, and your score is however many gates you make it through, counting down. Kind of like golf, you're going for a low score.
Okay.
If you pass through the final gate without striking any of them, you get a 0, which is a perfect score. You can pull up, and if you reach a point where you're just not comfortable passing through or continuing on in a stage for whatever reason, you can pull up through, gate number 8 and hand your scorecard out the window to one of the scorers and say, "Score me, I'm done," and just take an 8.
Gotcha.
There are some. Well, the event that I went to, there were a couple of stages that were a little hairy.
Yeah.
And there were people that just said they pulled up and passed through number 10 and said, "Score me," so that they would only end up with 9.
So there's an overall winner. Is that for all trucks, or are there different style of trucks that each then get an overall winner?
My understanding is that they do an overall winner. It was that way when we went.
Okay. And then each stage has a winner, but it's not by there's no. You're trying
really
to disco,
just,
so this is the disco winner.
Hey, who did best on this stage?
Okay. All right.
And people just kind of, oh yay.
So they don't run separate classes of truck then or anything like that?
No, it's everybody.
Okay. So you did go to Rovers on the Rocks this year, and this is which
I have
number?
come straight from Rovers on the Rocks
So
to our session here today.
Nice. So Rovers on the Rocks takes place where, and this is the which one?
This year was Rovers on the Rocks number 5. It happens each November. And it happens at the Roush Creek Off-Road Vehicle Park.
That's also in Pennsylvania?
In Tremont, Pennsylvania, north off of I-81. It's north of Harrisburg.
Okay, yeah.
So middle of the state then?
Yeah, a little east.
Middle-ish.
East center.
Yeah, east of center, but yeah.
Okay.
And Roush Creek is a truly challenging environment.
Hence the on the rocks part of the name, perhaps.
Yes, there is more rock than you could possibly ever want to see.
And the intended body damage that one might come to expect from something like that.
Well, you have to be prepared to accept that if you take certain trails. I tend to try and push the limits.
Really? Dave?
Me, maybe a little.
Although this year he didn't push any limits.
I did not. No, I pushed no limits this year. I pulled up into the parking lot, I parked my truck, and I said, I'm cargo.
So why were you cargo this year? What possessed you to not trail ride?
I am cargo because I am set upon making it to the end of the year without having to change my front diff.
Okay.
My front diff is missing a number of teeth from the spider gear, which means to me if I push it too hard, it's just a matter of time.
Right, with each missing tooth comes more likelihood of taking the rest out.
That's right. So I would like to nurse it along to the end of the year, at which point I will be calling a certain off-road parts vendor and saying, send me lockers and gears.
So what can you report as being a passenger then from Rovers on the Rocks?
I did not actually witness a lot of carnage this year. We did see some, I can think of at least 2 broken front diffs and a broken
yours
drive
would have been
shaft.
3 in that case.
Had I off-roaded, there's a fair chance that mine would have been number 3. But we saw in the competition phase of the event, we did see a broken front diff and a broken rear drive shaft on one truck.
Okay.
Interesting combination.
Yes. The rear drive shaft broken when he attempted to make good his escape.
He overloaded the front.
Yes.
Got it.
So
what kind of trails are there? Is this a escorted, not unescorted?
This is an unescorted. It is not. The park is open to everyone. So while it is option, it is possible that there'll be lots of Land Rovers around. It's open to everybody else at the same time. So you see a lot of different vehicles. You see anything from, and I've never seen ATVs. I've not seen motorcycles. I've not seen quads, but you do see buggies and a lot of Jeeps and Chevys and Toyotas and Xteras, and so it's a great mix of a lot of different types of vehicles. They don't let anyone go out alone.
That's good.
That's always good advice.
Well, and especially, Roush Creek has got lots of places that you can get yourself into lots of trouble. There's a good mix of all different kinds of trails. From my experience, there are a lot of trails at Roush Creek that are supposed to be easy, green trails that at most other off-road parks would be blues. And there's stuff that are blues that would be blacks in other places. So,
if I remember correctly, there's a lot of deep water crossings there too.
Yeah, you want to stay out of the water altogether.
Like Rover swallowing to the roof deep water crossings.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to go now.
I had I guess I could say, pleasure of snapping a picture of a friend of mine who thought that he was crossing a shallow water feature that looked like it could have been just a very large, long puddle, only to discover that it was a rover swallowing event. And he ended up in his lifted D2 with water 3 inches from the top of the windshield.
Whoa.
So
was he stuck there for a while? Did he get out?
He got out. We found him sitting on top of the truck.
Oh, okay. So he needed assistance.
We had to.
Was that this year?
Snatch him. No, that was last year.
That was previous year. Okay. Right.
That was last year.
I remember that. I remember that picture. Then.
I'm guessing he didn't drive that truck home?
No.
I can't imagine that being good for the computers.
We got it to try to start.
Well, trying and succeeding are often two different things.
My understanding, and I did not see this myself, but my understanding is that the parts shop that acquired the vehicle from him, from the owner, did get it running. Eventually. But
so what happened at this event that was of interest or note that maybe was different or?
Well, I didn't see a lot that was especially exciting after what we saw last year. But
it's not necessarily a bad
thing. Not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it seemed like everybody had a pretty good time. I have not seen a count on how many vehicles we actually had show up, but I would guess 25 or 30. It was an interesting mix. This would be the first time that I've seen an LR4 at Roush Creek on a trail. There were a number of LR3s, a lot of the Disco 1s and 2s. You know, they seem to be the predominant vehicle that you see out there frequently. I mean, and they've all gotten into the price category where you can take it out in the trail and.
Well, they are the new series truck after all.
Well, we did see two. There were 2 series trucks. The leaf sprung trucks are a little harsh on their operators at Roush.
I don't know why I would ever say such a thing. I don't understand.
Well, and the 3 inches of maximum articulation doesn't exactly lend itself well to rock crawling.
No. Well, and Roush Creek, to be fair, Roush Creek's got a lot of. It is all very rocky, but it's not really rock crawling.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of trails with lots of rock, but it's just rocky terrain.
Right. Which in a series truck is enough.
Yeah, no, that's...
You know about every last rock out there when you're in a series truck.
Absolutely. I watched a friend of ours bring his series truck out, and in one weekend at Roush Creek, he broke the mounts on the hood for his spare and the door latch on the driver's side door from being tossed about on the trails. So,
I'd say he was lucky. I think I know who that is.
Yes. Yes. So, I mean, it's a great event.
So is there camping going on there also? So you
camp for free.
Oh, camp for free. So you pay per day, and you pay per driver, per truck?
You pay per day, depending on which areas of the park you want to go to. And then your passengers over the age, I want to say, of 16. It could be a little lower than that.
What do you mean by areas of the park you want to go to? What does that mean?
So the park is not necessarily all owned by the people that operate it.
Oh, okay.
It is owned, my understanding is, by a logging company, and the operators lease the property. And then...
So you pay to go off the part that they're leasing, and if you want to go to other parts, then you pay more?
Yes.
And it depends on what's open?
Yes.
Okay. So
the logging company comes through and logs out an area, and then that area is of little or no use to them for the next however many years it's going to take for the trees to grow back. And the people at Roush Creek are then able to open that area up.
Okay.
So
everything is constantly changing. Though.
Yeah, there's a northeast section of the park, which is an extra $10 a day. But it looks like it's all been recently logged, like within the last 5 years would be my guess. And there's big sections there that have no trees. And, they have sections that they call Area 51 in Roswell, and it's just craters and mud and water. And
so it's a constantly changing environment. So you got anywhere from green laning to truck destroying trails. Absolutely,
yes. I mean, things that you pull up to and go, how on earth is anybody supposed to get a vehicle up that? And you every so often find a monument to the fact that somebody tried and didn't make it.
So there are scattered parts on the side of the trail, I assume. Carcasses.
Yes, one of my friends told me of his last adventure there. He lives in the area, and they found a broken CV joint laying in the middle of the trail. And he and his friends that he was with, that he was in a Rover, but they were not. And they proceeded to pass the broken CV joint about, and they named it the Scepter of Stupid. And whoever did the dumbest thing last had to then carry it about.
I like that.
That seems like a great idea.
I like that.
That's actually a good idea. Yeah.
So...
Now, does this have anything to do with Paragon? Paragon used to be an off-road park in that area.
My understanding is that it's in the area, but it's not.
Okay.
It's not.
Because what you're describing sounds a lot like what Paragon was. I know Paragon closed, and I never understood Roush Creek was different, related, maybe the same people, but in a different part. I was always kind of unclear about that.
Yeah, I've never been able to get anybody that I know that could tell me where Paragon was and how it fit with all of this.
Yeah.
Because there is another park not far, like within less than an hour drive from Roush Creek, that is being developed as we speak. It's called the Anthracite Outdoor Adventure Area. and it is somewhere in the ballpark of between 6,000 and 8,000 acres.
That sounds like Paragon.
Well, it was a strip mine.
That sounds like Paragon.
That was closed.
Yeah.
And left. And it's a little controversial with the people that are local to that area because where Anthracite is, I know, is not Paragon. Because it went straight from the mining company to public lands. Okay. And now somebody in the area has acquired public funds to build a public-private park that is going to be, it's not just going to be off-roading, it's going to be off-roading, and there will be times of the year that will be closed so that people can hunt. But they're in the process of actually doing real development where they're putting in a parking lot, a paved parking lot, which it's an off-road park. Why do you need a paved parking lot? But hey, it's a parking lot.
Well, I know a certain club member that would enjoy that.
Yes. In a 109.
Yes.
Yeah, not me.
So, they're putting up buildings for maintenance and administration, and they're putting up pavilions for camping.
So they're making it a little more official and as far as a park is concerned.
Yes.
Admittedly, I understand it's not Paragon, but it sounds a lot like what Paragon was, because Paragon was
an
old
my
strip mine
understanding
area,
is,
a lot of coal,
right,
up and down hills, mud holes. There's a stream crossing,
so my understanding is that Paragon is somewhere or where Paragon is in the vicinity of both Roush Creek and this Anthracite outdoor adventure area.
Gotcha.
So,
okay.
But somebody told me that it's the only person I could find that knew much about it told me, no, that's someplace else altogether.
Okay.
So,
but this one is being created much along the same lines as the old Paragon.
Sounds like it. Yeah. So Rovers on the Rocks is the fifth one. You'd go back?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So it's a great time.
Now they have other events at Roush Creek, not just Rovers on the Rocks, right?
Roush Creek is open every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and some holidays.
Okay.
To anybody that wants to roll in there with a.
But Rovers on the Rocks is not. It's not a Roush Creek event. It's a Land Rover Club event that takes place at Roush Creek.
Well, it's not even really a club event. I believe it's sponsored by Lucky 8.
Oh, okay.
And British 4x4 Specialists.
Okay.
Rover Whisperer.
Yes, the Rover Whisperer.
So it's their event that takes place at Roush Creek.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Roush Creek, on top of having all of this wonderful land on which to off-road, they also have some man-made trials courses, or man-made features that you can then use to set up trials courses. And they do so for this event. And at the end of Saturday, they hand out a trophy. They have two classes. The two classes of vehicles are tires 32 inches and smaller, and everything above 32 inches. So they're able to score it. Roush Creek actually has somebody come out and do the scoring for us so that it's done in as impartial a manner as possible. And they hand out a trophy at the end of Saturday night at dinner to whoever it is that won.
So how would you compare this to Conclave? I know you've been there a number of times. As far as trails, size, number of trucks that turn out?
Nowhere near as many trucks turn out at Rovers on the Rocks, at least not the last 2 years, as we saw for Conclave. Rovers on the Rocks is not that big kind of formal event that you see Conclave. It's a lot more laid back. It's show up and camp with a bunch of other people with Land Rovers and then go four-wheel with them.
Sounds like it might be a little more technically challenging than the Conclave.
I would say so.
Okay.
I mean, the Conclave has features that are every bit as rough, if not rougher, than some of the things that you will see at Roush Creek. The rock flows at the Cove are as tough as anything you're going to see.
Yet there are other places at the Conclave where it's pretty mild, so you wouldn't have to see any of that your entire time there.
The Cove also has trails that are just like, you're just green laning. Roush Creek kind of dials almost everything up a notch. And I believe that Roush Creek is significantly more spread out.
Okay. How's the camping compare? I guess that's what I'm not clear about. Camping because Conclave originally was like a camp site that has off-roading.
The Cove, which is where they do Conclave, is a campground.
Right. You
could take your family there outside of these events and just camp there. And it's just like going to a campground. They have, they've got a lake that you can swim in, and they have a lifeguard on duty, and they have showers and nice campsites with picnic tables, and they even have cabins for people that aren't necessarily into camping that folks could stay at.
It's almost a resort then.
Well, I wouldn't go
by
that far.
Comparison.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but yeah.
I said almost.
Yeah. Roush Creek, the camping is...
You wouldn't take your 510 horsepower supercharged Range Rover Sport there.
If you're going to be camping, you could. Just stay in a cabin.
It's not that swanky.
If you've got one of those, you could stay in the cabin.
I still don't think it's that swanky.
At Roush Creek, they've got porta-johns, picnic tables, and fire rings. And that's it.
Okay. It's a little more primitive.
Yeah. I mean, pack your own garbage in, pack your own garbage out.
Cost comparison?
Camping at Roush Creek costs you $0.
Oh, so you're just paying for the event then?
You're just paying for going wheeling on whatever day you're wheeling.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So it's a per diem trail access thing.
Yes.
Pretty slick.
Interesting.
And the Cove is you're paying for a campground.
Now, have you been to either of these parks at any other time besides these events? I'm wondering what they're like in the wintertime, spring, summer.
I have only been to the Cove for the Conclave event.
Okay.
I've heard that I've heard from people even outside of Land Rovers that the Cove is just as nice all year round.
It would seem so.
Open.
Yeah, it would seem to be.
Roush Creek changes every time you go.
That adds to the challenge as well.
Absolutely. You could drive a trail at Roush Creek, and it could be a green this time. If you come back a month and it's rained a lot, but in the month in between now and next time you're there, it will be a whole different trail.
So what is your next event?
Depending on the condition of my fleet of discoveries, I could, in theory, make it out to, if the Green Oval Guild decides to do their turkey run at the Wilds on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. If they do it this year, I could try and do that. If I don't do that, it could be the Fort Pitt Land Rover Group's winter run.
That's right. That's coming up.
The Winter Classic.
The Winter Classic.
Winter Classic, yes.
We haven't decided a date, but it's either going to be early January or early February.
It usually gets moved around based on the existence or non-existence of winter.
Yes.
Well, that's been what it's been lately. It's been the existence of winter, but yeah, I think it's going to be February, and I think we're going to go to the new place in Ligonier.
Excellent.
So that's the plan. In fact, we got to talk to them.
I will.
That's off topic.
Definitely plan on.
Good. So if you do go to this, we want to hear if you go to the Wilds event, Turkey Trot. What was it called?
The Turkey Run.
Turkey Run. I like Turkey Trot better. It sounded. Yes.
And
is that a camping event? Is that a day event?
No, that's just a 1 day run out there and run back.
Hey, if my 109 is available,
yeah,
maybe I'll go with you. Well, thanks, Dave. We appreciate you coming in and talking about the trails, and hopefully we'll keep you as our trail correspondent. We need a trail correspondent. We didn't have anybody to. Well, because I didn't have a truck that was out there. So,
if we get the 109 rolling,
109's getting closer every day, right?
You'll be ready for the Maine Winter Romp with me.
Someday. I could see, that's more of a 110. I think the Maine Winter is more of a 110 event than it is a 109 event.
Actually, the 109 is fabulous as long as you don't need headlights.
What, right now?
It's the after dark portion that we still have some issues with the 109.
Big LED flashlights and duct tape.
Oh, you want me to scooterize it?
I want you to make it as functional as it needs to be.
Well, gentleman does not go motoring after dark, so it's fine right now.
Well, that ends another episode of the CentreSteer podcast. I want to thank everybody for listening, and also thank Dave for coming in and being our correspondent on the trail. That's pretty cool. Maybe you should maybe in future you can take a recorder and record something on the trail for us. Then we can edit that in.
I'm sure I can come up with something involving roaring engines and smashing.
Hey, watch this.
Drivetrain parts. Yeah. The crunching of differentials and whatnot.
So hopefully we'll talk to you next month for another exciting edition. Hopefully it'll be exciting. We're trying to make it exciting. The CentreSteer podcast. Thanks very much.
The CentreSteer theme song, Sunset Rider by the Tritons, is available from Mivio's Music Alley. Check it out at music.mivio.com.
John, have a weird
forget her
friend.
name, but
They're all weird.
Well, yeah, I know.
How could he ever
Wrote
have
down
such a...
much.
I like how every friend always says about my other friends, they're weird. I'm like, yeah, have you looked at yourself?
Yeah, I know.
You're all weird.
I know.
You're all weird.
We are.
And somehow you're the connection for all of us.
Yes, I am. I am the connection.
The
Yes.
center of the universe. Yes.
Yeah, right. Not at all. Not at all.
The center of the weird universe.
Center of a universe. I'll say that.